Hey, Rob, welcome to the Get in the Mode podcast.
David, what's up? It's so good to see you. Thanks for having me. You are the best.
Thank you. It was great to meet you at the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit. Such a great conference, wasn't it?
It was
What was your experience like?
Wow, it was fantastic. I mean, it's so wonderful. Alex did such a great job putting that together, and to bring all these folks that are like-minded and want to learn how to, level up their leadership skills, level up their personal skills, really be mindful about how they're going about things in their life, and especially with their business. I mean, that was my kind of place to be. So yeah, it was an amazing experience. How'd you feel about it?
Likewise, I interviewed Alex on a podcast prior to that. So prior to the summit, and it's like, hey, I want to send this to you and you should come over. And that was kind of like the first that type of conference I'd attended. I was drawn to the messaging that he had on the website and obviously what he talked about on the podcast. And it was just fascinating, all the content and you were one of the speakers. You spoke on the 10 disciplines, which we'll get into. But very, very amazing experience, great conference, lots of takeaways, practical things that I could, put in my life. So it was great. Let's jump into sort of like the talk that you gave on I believe it was called the 10 disciplines for optimal living, if I remember.
It's the 10 disciplines for managing and maximizing your energy.
Energy. That's right.
Energy. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And I think if I'm understanding you right, maybe I'll let you explain this better, but I think what you're trying to say is that can lead to optimal living, which is like part of the entrepreneurial life is like, we sacrifice a lot of things, and you're kind of number one. Let me ask you, what are the things that you end up sacrificing, if you're an entrepreneur or a C-suite leader at the top? What are the pitfalls you've seen?
Your health, your mental health, your physical health, your relationships. There's 5 traits. Actually, somebody that I know very well that works with entrepreneurs said something to me, and I like to share it, whenever I can. And that is that he had noticed in all the work that he does that there's these 5 common traits of entrepreneurs, and they may have one, they may have more than one, or they might have all 5, but they have high or severe anxiety. They have experienced some sort of trauma in their life. They have depression. They've been bankrupt, or they're on the verge of bankruptcy, but nobody knows, or they have some sort of addiction. And those are about 5 traits. And as I make my way through, I've been an entrepreneur for 31 years, and I see it all the time. It's 1, 2, or all 5 for so many entrepreneurs. But we have this suit of armor up, and nobody can see through it. So it's all good on the outside.
I completely agree. It just kind of, I was sort of like in that hustle mode myself. It's sort of like, hey, everybody else is doing it, I got to do it. And this is the only way to make it happen. So that's one. And then you get into entrepreneur life for freedom, like, whether it's financial, whatever you're aspiring to, and that's a good thing. And then you actually end up in some sort of a trap with these 5 things that you're talking about.
I wonder about, entrepreneurs. There's 2 things I always think about with entrepreneurs, and it kind of get masks sometimes around money. But what I really think is happening is there's a sense of control that you feel you have when you're an entrepreneur. And you just aren't wired to be able to work for somebody, so you have to have control.
Right.
And so I actually think entrepreneurship has a big component of needing control. And that oftentimes is because you didn't have control at some point in your life. And this is the way you're going to get it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You say that too. And, losing control, and you actually end up losing control of you're like out of control.
That's what
Um,
ends up happening. Exactly.
Now, you recommend optimal life. What's sort of like expand on that? What's sort of your definition of that,
Yeah.
energy and
So to have your optimal life, it's all about reaching your full potential in this life. It's everything that's possible for you. It's everything that your soul wants you to be and is capable of being. And it means that you let fear and ego dissipate. You let it go because it's not serving you, but it gets in your way. And it blocks your energy. So that's why we talk about these 10 disciplines for managing and maximizing your energy, because fear and ego are in your way. It's blocking your energy, and your energy is your life force. So I hope everyone's with me here. But your energy is your life force. And this is how you show up and make a real difference in the world, what you were meant to do during your time in this life on this earth. And so you have to build the foundation to create space to get to your optimal life. And these 10 disciplines are the foundation. And then we take you on a journey to create your optimal life from there.
Yeah. So on those 10 disciplines, I know you have it on your website as an ebook that you can download. So that we'll link in the show notes. I'm very interested in I kind of picked out some disciplines that I think our audience might benefit from. I was picking out the second one where you're talking about, take time off, right? Retreat. Oftentimes, so there's two types of retreat. I want to differentiate. One is kind of like a retreat with a goal to unplug, perhaps it could be by yourself. You could go on a journaling exercise, self-discovery. So that's one style of retreat. The other one is sort of like, perhaps, I think you organize a retreat event too, where you actually are in the company of others, or perhaps your teammates. You can include some key members from your team. I'm more curious about the first type, right? What are some ways, and I think you're talking about both in that discipline, and it's important to have both. I'm curious, what are some practices that you can incorporate to unplug and kind of go on a retreat? What does that look like?
Well, let me first clarify one thing, because in discipline number 2, which is the discipline you're speaking of, take time off, that retreat can be part of that, but we recommend that you take 130 days off per year and don't think about work the entire day. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're completely unplugged and off the grid and away from it. It's just you're not doing anything work related. But let me answer your question as it relates to retreat. And it's something I'm very familiar with and very experienced with. The retreat I host is actually a retreat in silence. It's a bunch of leaders from around the world that come together and spend 5 days, of which 2.5 are in complete silence. The whole time that you're there, we encourage that you turn your phone and all your connection to the outside world off. But we don't demand or there's no rule, because you have to be the judge of what's best for you. But this is what we do. And, when we take time to unplug and actually be in silence, which may seem extreme for many people, but let me just explain for a minute why it's valuable. You really haven't been in silence pretty much since you were born. It's been busy, since the moment you came out of the womb, and people were cleaning you up and getting you ready for life, and then your parents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a really unique thing happens when you are in silence. And that is that your mind slows down, and you start to see things with a greater awareness. Your sense of awareness goes up. And that shows you what the mind is capable of, because it's there for you each and every moment of each and every day. But because we're busy, it's hard to feel into it, to notice it. But when we're silent, it's amazing how somebody finds two squirrels playing around in the leaves like it was the best TV show they ever watched in, their whole life. Why is that? It's because you have a new awareness that you just felt into. You just noticed. And that's there for us each and every moment. And so by doing a retreat like that, when you go back to your busy life, you can tap into that feeling and you can bring it out when you're on the busy streets of Denver, and you can notice the beauty all around you and the miracle of everything that you see, smell, touch, hear, all of it.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the squirrels, but I was up in Grand Junction, 2 days ago, and then I saw these beautiful, Grand Mesa, these red rocks that are exposed to wind and, all these elements, weather patterns, crazy weather patterns. And they formed this sort of like majestic looking flat tops, right? One thing I was kind of, a lesson learned from me was like how, like the elements kind of made them appear in their splendor, sort of like the things that happen to us beyond our control, certain external things. And they can, it's not just weathering the storm. Maybe that's kind of making us better. We can actually thrive in some of those environments, as long as it's not self-caused. Obviously, sometimes it could be from certain decisions we've made. But at the same time, I think certain external factors. So anyway, I think it's like just kind of like the silence aspect that you mentioned, how observing certain things, can actually add certain learnings that you just can't read a book or listen to a podcast or watch a video and learn.
That's so true. That's so true. And I love how you put that. I mean, it's amazing how the weather patterns and the way this whole beauty came together without any of us doing anything, and then to notice it and be in awe of it.
Right. Yeah. Now, another phrase that I like, it's one of my mantra. Somebody asked me, like, the Tim Ferriss has, like, hey, if there was one billboard to your life, that you want to write something on a billboard of your life, what would that be? And I always, it's the Socratic know thyself. The greatest sin is not to know thyself. So that's your third discipline. Expand that for our listeners.
Sure. I mean, what we encourage everyone to do is to be you 100% of the time, 24/7, 365. And often what happens is we become chameleons. And so we fit into the environments that we're placed into, especially with other human beings. And we aren't our true, authentic self. We're self-conscious. We don't want to say the wrong thing, but people pick up on that when we aren't our true, authentic self. And when we walk away from those situations, people say or think, oh, that person kind of had a weird vibe about them or a weird energy, because it's about energy, and people pick up on you when you're not being authentic. But when you're truly you, and I'm talking like if obviously we want to be polite and caring and empathetic and compassionate to our fellow humans, but at the same time, sharing how you feel about certain things, or being goofy, or, those types of things, whatever it is that makes you uniquely you, go for it, be you. Because people, when you're done with that interaction, people know what they got. They know who they're dealing with, and they appreciate that. I mean, I'm sure, David, like you, I have so many unique people in my life, and I love them all so much, but they're so different. Some are real quiet and very reserved, and that's just their true nature. Other people are, boisterous and, always making jokes and tons of energy and goofy. And I love those people too, because they're just who they are. And I know them and appreciate them for that. So that's what we encourage you to do. And it's a lifelong journey. It takes time to learn about yourself. And there are all kinds of ways that you can go about doing that. And we just always encourage people to start learning more about yourself and go down the path and don't ever stop.
Right. One of the things people can actually see through you if if your actions are not congruent with who you are, right? If you're trying to imitate something, this is everybody's saying this is how you behave. All these behaviors and kinks that we have, like the idiosyncrasies, that can come, like it's very revealing of is people can actually tell, right, how congruent that is with who you are. I'm curious, what sort of practices do you recommend, sort of like to self-discover yourself? Do you have anything that's useful for you?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that's a great question. And for those that are just tipping or dipping their toe in the water, we always like to recommend trying out personality profiles. And each one has a different kind of way that they share what you're kind of all about, and they're all valuable and they're usually inexpensive. And you could do it in the privacy of your own, on your own. You don't have to share it. And you can start to learn a little bit about, kind of your MO, your mode of operandi. And then if you good to move to a next step, going out to your closest, the people that know you best in the world, the people that you're closest to, and simply ask them a question like, what are my strengths and weaknesses? And what do you wish I'd do more of? And what do you wish I'd stop doing? And that can start to give a window into who you are. And so those are kind of good starting points. Therapy is a gift if you have the means to do it and the time. You can really begin to shed some layers through therapy. Then, there's all kinds of alternative ways to go even deeper. For me, meditation has been very useful in actually getting to know myself, because in my meditation practice, I'm sitting with my thoughts, and that could be challenging at times. And so you really start to understand the things that are getting replayed over and over, the movies of your life that are getting replayed over and over again. And you start to understand your triggers. And then the part of the meditation practice that could be useful is learning from those. And then when you're going about your day-to-day life, you pause in that moment between stimulus and response, and hopefully show up as a better person, a more compassionate person, a more loving person. So, those are kind of the spectrum to a certain extent of where people could, start to check out, and where a good starting point might be for them.
Yeah. And, another well, before I ask about, share my, what I use, I'm curious in terms of personality profiles. Do you feel like, there's Enneagram, there's DISC, there's Myers-Briggs, any recommendations on what you have seen people use? Or it may not be recommendations, but even kind of experience or, things that people have shared with you?
I think they're all great. And I think some people are drawn to certain ones more than others. I like Enneagram personally. I like Colby. But, I know people like Myers-Briggs, and they have their thing up on their computer screen or their desk or whatever. They do that with Colby. A lot of people do that too, but they're all so good, and they all tell you something different. So, you might just pick one and start there. And, you can kind of take it, you could take all of them. It's really not expensive really, or time consuming. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah. I've also been journaling a lot lately.
Great.
That's been super helpful for me.
Yes.
In terms of, there's even books that you can pick up from bookstores that kind of talks about like top 5 lists that you can keep making for yourself. And it'll ask some questions. And, I think all of these that ask some internal questions where you're spending time with yourself, quietly and pondering, I think can help.
Yes.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
But I think it's a discipline because you have to practice it. It's part of your life, right?
That's right.
That's what you're talking about in your 10 disciplines.
That's right. In fact, discipline number 4 is be still. And that's where we encourage people to sit in silence for at least 30 minutes every day. And we recommend journaling. That's in silence. It's active. Your mind's going, and there's nothing wrong with that. You could sit and stare out the window at a willow tree. That's what one of our clients does. You could sit in meditation like me. You could pray, whatever it is, but just, take that time, schedule it in. And find a little solitude for 30 minutes every day. It's quite impactful in people's lives.
Awesome. I want to get to one more discipline. It's say no more often. So sometimes we have, as leaders and entrepreneurs, we want to be helpful and like we want to solve problems, and we get into this mode of like, oh yeah, we say yes to a lot of things. I'm curious. First, I'll let you kind of respond to what you mean no more off, NO, not the NOW, but
right.
No more off, saying no more often. And then I have a follow-up to that. So maybe I'll, have you kind of define that a little.
Yeah. So say no often is discipline number 6. And that's where we encourage people to say no to everything that doesn't fit into the first 5 disciplines. And we went through like 3 of them. So you're your listeners can kind of pick up on it. But it's hard to say no, as you mentioned, but it can be quite impactful and powerful when you do. And so this is where you begin to get really clear about doing the things that matter most in your life. It means you don't have FOMO. You're not afraid to miss out on that meeting, or, what if I would do this and I better do that? Because if you really start adding it up and look at the time and energy spent on all these activities that we say yes to, you're probably not spending your time in the right places based on maybe where you want to go in your life. And so this is the beginning point of where you begin to understand what to say no to. Once you get clear about what to say no to, you practice it, and you won't be perfect at it. Do a little bit at a time. For example, if you said no to just 25% of the things that you've been saying yes to, you just saved yourself 25%. I mean, who knows how many hours you just saved yourself. And it's only a quarter of the time now that you're saying no instead of 100% of the time. One of the gauges that you can look to is it giving you energy? So say you see a meeting on your calendar and you go, oh, why did I say yes to that? There's an indicator for the future. Never say yes to something like that again. So you're just constantly learning, constantly honing in on it. And you'll get very good at it, and it'll feel good. And the last thing, and my Enneagram, by the way, speaking of the profiling tools, is I'm a number 3 and a number 2. So I'm a helper and an achiever. So when somebody asks me, I definitely want to say yes. And then I want to go all in on it. So I help them achieve whatever it is the issue is. So I have to be really mindful around this. But in saying no, I still want to help. So you can make recommendations like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that, but let me introduce you to this person, or this is a great resource that you might find helpful, those types of things. So you always leave them with, you're still giving, you're just not giving of all your time.
Right. That's I really like the barometer that you described of like what you see on the calendar. Do you look forward to it, or do you kind of like, oh man, I got to do this now, like before, that's something you want to cut out in the future, or find ways to figure out how to have somebody else do that, delegate,
Right.
who might enjoy that, right? So that's now you also talk a little bit about keeping everything in one place. It's kind of, you talk about the legal letter pad or the notepad where you kind of jot down everything up. I'm guessing you have one right now next to you.
I do. I do. I happen to use a Remarkable. It's the electronic notepad. But for put everything in one place, which is discipline number 9. This is where you pick the one place that you write down, capture every idea, commitment, thought, action item, and promise. And what we notice with entrepreneurs in particular is that they would be capturing all this stuff going on throughout the day in many places, Post-it notes, on their phone, maybe a journal that they carry around, it could be anything, or just trying to use their memory. And that causes, at the end of the day, a lot of anxiety and stress, because you're trying to remember, and what about this, and where did I put that? And I was supposed to call somebody back, but where is it? I don't remember where their number is, all this kind of stuff. So what we encourage you to do is pick one place. It's by your side all the time. It's like a notepad or whatever, Remarkable, your phone, whatever. And as you're having your discussions, as you're going through your day and you have an idea, you jot it down. At the end of the day, you take a look at everything in your one place, and then you compartmentalize it. So you put it in the right place off of your one place. And some of it might get delegated to, somebody on your team. Something might go into your calendar. Something might be, an action that you take right now before you close out your day, et cetera. So, but everything was right there. And what entrepreneurs don't realize, and leaders, is that they're letting people down. Because they're not reliable. And so your team members, they're having conversations with you, and they've realized that you don't follow through on stuff, and that you forget things all the time. And then when they're done with a meeting with you or whatnot, they're walking away going, I don't know if he or she is going to follow through on this. They almost start to lose trust, and you don't want to let your team down. So it's a really important discipline to focus in on. It's really simple, actually, but like all of them, they're kind of simple, but you really have to be disciplined about it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about kind of really listening, and you're taking action. Like, as when somebody says something, oh yeah, I'll be sure to look into that. And then you forget about it. Like, that's a sign of disrespect. And like, you've really not listened to the person. As leaders and entrepreneurs, we want to listen and hear, things, and, solve problems. I also feel like it could be something, I personally think it has to be low tech. It could be like, I personally like these type of notepads, and I, use a fountain pen. I like writing with it. And I know the Remarkable is a little bit low tech too, right? I mean, it doesn't give you notifications, and you can log into Facebook from there.
That's
I'm
right.
guessing.
That's right. That's right. I'm with you, by the way. I think the lower tech you could go, the better. And Remarkable, as far as tech goes, is about as low tech as it gets. But what you're doing is fantastic, because it's just old school. It can't go wrong. It's not going to run out of batteries. You got the pen, it's going to work like 99% of the time or something. So, right. It's foolproof, and so if I always think that's really the best way, is the lowest tech that you could go, and you feel comfortable with it.
Yeah. And I've even looked at like audio journaling devices on Amazon. I've not bought one. Maybe I'll review one on video or something like that after I buy one. But I feel like even that could be low tech. You just press a button and start recording your voice and your thoughts and, action items and whatever comes to you.
And I would say for that, one of the beauties of your low tech version and my low tech version and anyone else is using a low tech version is, say you're in a meeting with 4 other people and it's a topic maybe you're not as engaged in for whatever reason, like actually that does happen. And you start to think of, oh my gosh, like I need to pick up dinner on the way home. I just remembered, or I need to, you can quickly jot down something and it's not disruptive. Now you can't pull out an audio thing and say, pick up dinner on the way home, or make sure to call big client ABC after this meeting. I just remembered. But with your low tech, you can make a quick note. Sometimes you're really engaged in the meeting and a thought pops, but you're waiting for people to end what they need to say, and which is important. So you just jot down a bullet or two about what you want to say or things that you want to hit on, and it's not disruptive. So that's the beauty of your system that you have now with that spiral notebook. It's so powerful and it's so simple.
Yeah. Well, Rob, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Where can people find you, and where can they download this ebook?
Just go to the 10disciplines.com and it's all there. So you could get the ebook and find out anything you need to know. And David, I thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it. And I'm so glad and grateful that our paths crossed there in Denver outside on the sidewalk. That was really great. I really enjoyed chatting with you then. And I've enjoyed it. Chatting with you here over the Zoom.
Before you go, also share about the retreat that you're doing in Colorado. You're coming back in October, did you say?
That's right. Yep. October 9th to the 12th, I believe it is, and donothingbook.com. We do close the registrations. We have 2 spots left. And so we keep it at a certain size, and so you can check out everything you might want to know about the retreat at donothingbook.com.
Awesome, Rob. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate you.